My name is Rama, and I would like to talk to you about Tantric Buddhism. What is Buddhism? Buddhism is a code of ethics, a set of meditation methods of making the mind calm and quiet. There are a lot of different types of Buddhism, and the essence of all of them is meditation. Some forms of Buddhism emphasize reincarnation, where you're going to get to in your next life or future lives. Some discuss conservation of energy. Some types of Buddhism have to do with visualizations, very complex visualizations, where you will imagine certain things in your mind and learn to hold them perfectly. Some involve ritual, devotion to teachers, devotion to ideals, no devotion at all. There is a lot of flavors of Buddhism. There is one form of Buddhism that is the graduate school of Buddhism, and that's what I'd like to talk to you about. I'd like to start you at the top. We're up in the Himalayas today, and I'd like to talk to you about Tantric Buddhism, Tibetan Tantric Buddhism, or Vajrayana Buddhism, which is very similar to Zen Buddhism. It is the essence of practice. The essence of Buddhism, the essence of practice, is that there is nirvana. And nirvana is not far away. Now, there's some forms of Buddhism, and I respect them all. I have to tell you, I respect them all. But there's some forms of Buddhism where they tell you, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. When you're a kid, I think it's good to believe in Santa Claus. I liked believing in Santa Claus. But when we grow up, we find out that maybe there isn't a Santa Claus. Does that mean that we shouldn't have a belief in Santa Claus when we're a kid? No, kids need Santa Claus. It's nice. But then we grow up, and maybe we get to play Santa Claus and give somebody a present. So with Buddhism, essentially what we're doing is we are growing up. We are growing up with Santa Claus to start with. Santa Claus is a temple. Santa Claus is a specific way to meditate, always the same way. Santa Claus is believing that just because you shave your head and put on an ochre robe, that you are somehow holy, and somehow maybe even holier than the person who's hanging out in jeans with curly hair. That's Santa Claus. It's good. In the beginning, you really need, for many people, to have those formations, those aggregates. You need something that you can say, this is different than what I've done, and if I do this, it convinces my body and my mind and my spirit that I'm starting a new life, because I don't like my old life. I want something better. Tantric Buddhism, however, is different. In Tantric Buddhism, we do not believe in Santa Claus. We believe that nirvana is here now. Nirvana is not separate. It's not some place you're going to go to in another life. It's not some state of exalted consciousness that only a few people get to. As a matter of fact, we believe that everything is holy, that everything is nirvana. In many forms of Buddhism, they tell you not to have sex. They tell you not to do this, not to do that, not to do the other thing. It's hard to figure out what they're telling you to do because there's so many things not to do. In Tantric Buddhism, we have serious respect for that because we feel that some people need those codified belief systems. These are building blocks that help them gradually gain control over their energy, their life, their mind, develop mental power, the flow of Kundalini energy, and bring them into higher states of mind. But eventually, these things can become limitations. Eventually, it's necessary, in a way, for us to look around at the panorama of life and realize that while these might have been fine ways for us to start, these might have been very good practices in the beginning, that we have to go beyond them. We have to go to something higher, something deeper, something perhaps more subtle. And that is to realize that there is no sin. To realize that there is no Santa Claus. To realize that there's no devil. To realize in a way that there's no God, or that everything is God. To not quite be so simplistic in our view of reality. Putting on an ochre robe and shaving your head is a step. It's kind of like getting a college diploma. What is it? It's a piece of paper. Maybe it makes you feel better about yourself. Maybe it's a certificate of accomplishment. Maybe it's not. Maybe you faked your way through school. The real measurement in Tantric Buddhist practice is obviously how long you can stop your thought and how well you can meditate. But the real measurement is, how do you treat the people around you when no one else is watching? How do you treat yourself? Do you have a sense of reverence for life, not just when other people are watching? Do you think there's something wrong with sex? You know, you wouldn't be here without it. I don't know if that's good or bad. There's nothing wrong with sex. And someone who thinks there's something wrong with sex, I think, is a little hung up. As hung up as someone who thinks that that's all that is important. Tantric Buddhism says that in all energy, in all life, in all situations, enlightenment exists. But you have to be able to meditate very, very well to see that. At the same time, there's a tremendous respect for people who aren't at that point yet, who need to believe in Santa Claus. We believe there's a gradual pathway to enlightenment, and there's the Concorde, the fast jet. There's the way to get there very rapidly, to suddenly just be in the center of all things. It's up to you which you take. One is not better than another. But I'm a teacher of Tantric Buddhism. I believe in total immersion for people who it's right for to learn to meditate. And so today I'm going to teach you a little bit about Tantric Buddhism and what that means to me. It means no inhibitions at all. But that depends upon a total commitment to meditation, to development of the mind, to development of a career, to development of a realistic life. It doesn't mean running away. If Buddhism means running away to you, to some beautiful place, a beautiful lake, a beautiful mountain, then that's not Buddhism as I know it. That's being scared and running away, and sometimes we all feel that way. To me, Tantric Buddhism means that I accept the fact that I live in an adversarial world and I can deal with it. It's made me strong. Meditation has made me strong. Hasn't made me overconfident, but it's made me strong, and I can deal with anything that comes up, including my death, including my rebirth, including nirvana, whatever it is. I am not a bigot, nor do I feel that I'm better than anyone else, nor do I feel that I'm less than anyone else. This is just the overall template of Tantric Buddhism. This is where we begin. Now, needless to say, in order to do all this, it's essential to have a sense of who you are and what enlightenment is. And that comes from meditation. Meditation and enlightenment is inside you. It's outside you. It's in every flower. It's in monasteries. It's in the streets. It's everywhere. It's in all things. It's in all life. But your mind has to be large enough, your view of life expansive enough, your heart has to be big enough to know and see this. There's a little book, it's one of my favorites, perhaps you've read it, The Little Prince, Saint-Exupéry. And there's a line that I always come back to. He says, "It is only with the heart that one sees rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." Now that's the code of ethics that I live by. So the person who practices Tantric Buddhism is someone who learns to meditate. They learn to stop their thoughts and go beyond the 10 Commandments, go beyond the Eightfold Path, go beyond everything, and maybe come back to the beginning of everything. Not as an idea, not as an intellectualization, but as a reality. And the way that reality is possible, well, I'm not going to tell you right here, because, we're off in the Himalayas and it's wonderful and everything. But I need to be in a slightly more contemporary setting for you to understand, I think, exactly what I want to tell you. So you and I are going to go over to the world of the 90s and the new millennia, and we're going to talk about how Tantric Buddhism is relevant not thousands of years ago in Tibet, in monasteries, but today, here in the metropolitan world that we live in. Come on, let's take a walk. Well, here we are. We're in the modern world, a world of computer technology, a world of space travel, a world that on the surface is very different than when perhaps the Buddha was walking around and giving his first talk to his first disciples. But the world, you know, it really hasn't changed. Fashion changes all the time. Telecommunication is in today. Tomorrow it'll be something else. But reality is always the same. Happiness is always the same. Unhappiness is always the same. Desire is always the same. Frustration is always the same. Depression is always the same. And enlightenment is always the same. Well, maybe that's the one thing that isn't always the same, because it's endless and it's always new. So I'm a Buddhist teacher. I'm a Buddhist monk. And I do a lot of different things. I write music. I produce commercials. I teach people how to become enlightened. I design software, everything from educational software on through to very complex artificial intelligence and expert systems. I write rock and roll, produce rock videos. I do all kinds of things. And I'm a Buddhist monk. And I have relationships sometimes. Sometimes I'm celibate. It depends on who I'm around. Because it's not what you do, it's who you are. Yet at the same time, there has to be a structure. Now this is Tantric Buddhism. This is what's going to be perhaps a little bit confusing in the beginning, but I think you can handle it. I think you can. Now try and follow me just for a second. Meditation is the art of stopping thought. When thought stops, the world stops. When you stop thought completely, then, well, it's kind of like when I take my sunglasses off. Here, I'm going to take my sunglasses off. Now, a few moments ago, I was seeing life one way, and now I'm seeing life another way. All it took was the removal of my sunglasses. Well, that's what happens when you stop thought. When you stop thought, the world as you know it changes. Well, not completely. No, it still looks a little bit like it did a minute ago. But there's much more light. There's much more color. There's much more brightness. When you stop thought, which you will begin to do in meditation sessions and eventually, of course, all the time, that's exactly what happens. You will see more dimensions. You will have more energy. You will be able to understand things without having to think them out. Thinking is great. But we work in the structure of a language. Whether it's English, French, Japanese, German, Dutch, it doesn't matter. It's a language. Language is built on images. Images have symbolisms. They have meanings, etymologies that cross-reference cultures, cosmology. It's all very complicated. But it has very little to do with reality. Meditation and Buddhism is the study of reality. It's about being real. It's about being strong. It's about being happy and excited. And it's about being beyond personality. Now, personality is wonderful. It's fun to be somebody. It's fun to play at life. It's fun to see who you can make yourself up into. I think we're all actors and actresses. Isn't that what you do every day? You're playing a part. You're going out into life, and maybe you're playing at being a youngster, or you're playing at being an adolescent, or you're playing at being an adult, or a parent, or a grandparent. We're all playing different roles in life. And of course, I believe in reincarnation. Well, I believe in it because it's true, naturally. And we're all playing in one lifetime or another lifetime countless roles, forever and ever and ever, because there is no end and there is no beginning. There's only existence. You know, there's not even a middle. So we all go on forever. It seems kind of inane, doesn't it? Well, only if you don't meditate. When you meditate, that is to say, when you go beyond the limitations of the physical, you experience the boundless reality of life. I bet you meditate without knowing it sometimes. You go to a beautiful place and you just look off into the distance. And as you look off into the distance, suddenly your spirit travels. You may not call it meditation, but you feel something. You feel. You don't just think. You feel. Maybe you're having sex with someone and you're very distant. You're worlds apart. And maybe just once in a while there's this magic moment, and I don't think it's an orgasm. That you can do by yourself. There's a magic moment when suddenly there aren't two bodies connecting. There's only one. Maybe there aren't even bodies anymore. There's something that we can't describe beyond physical ecstasy. That's what Tantra is all about. Not about sex, not about looking off into grand vistas. Sure, it's about those things. It's about your ability to experience countless sides of life, beautiful sides of life. The fun with Tantra is that we don't just do it in the meditation hall. Yes, we do it in a meditation hall, of course. You come in, you sit in a classroom, I or another tantric teacher will teach you how to meditate. We'll meditate as hard as we can. And if we generate enough energy, you will actually be empowered by sitting with us. The energy transfers. If I go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, if I close my eyes, stop thought, I can do it with my eyes open also, by the way. If I close my eyes, stop thought, an energy will come out of me because I can stop thought and go into another dimension. And whoever's in the room will be affected by it. It'll touch them. It'll empower them. It'll make their mind quiet for a moment. That's how we really teach people how to meditate. Then, when we learn how to do it in a meditation hall, we go outside and do it. So you can find a moment when you're just living your life. You're just sitting in the car, waiting for the light to change. And it's not changing, and you're in a rush, and you're late for an appointment, and you know, you're having a bad hair day. I mean, just nothing is working out, and suddenly for a moment, because you've been meditating at home, the world will go away. Time will stop. Your mind will become clear, and yes, you'll be there, and yes, of course you'll know when the light turns green, and you'll look both ways before going forward. But for a moment, you will be in another universe. Maybe 1,000 universes simultaneously. That's what Tantra is about. Tantra means taking the experience of meditation that normally is reserved for sitting with your legs folded and your eyes closed out into the world. Let me give you an example. I'm in the music business, do all kinds of music, music for television shows, music for films. I also do rock and roll. Now, some people would find it very difficult to understand how a person who practices Buddhism can be involved with rock and roll. They seem like two opposite things. Rock and roll is supposed to be heavy, dark, sensual, and Buddhism is supposed to be, I don't know, something that just happens up in the Himalayas, where the light is beautiful and we walk around and we just, you know, look at flowers, or we're in Japan in a Zen garden or something like that. But when I get involved in music and I get involved in rock and roll, if I can meditate, if I can hold my mind in a meditative state, then when I perform, when I compose, or when I dance, then, well, what do I have? I have Tantra. I have cross currents of life coming together, and my life is art. I'm in a meditative state. I'm beyond thought, I'm beyond time, space, yet here I am right in the middle of it, experiencing multidimensional reality. Let me give you an example. I recently made a rock video. We did a dance album, my group Zazen and I. And I did something very unusual, I guess you might think, for a Buddhist monk. Not only did I make a rock video, not only am I dancing in a rock video, but I hired some very beautiful dancers to be in the video, and 2 Playboy bunnies. These are 2 women, very beautiful women, very nice women. One was a Miss Canada. She was in the Miss Universe pageant. Another one was Playmate of the Year. Now, normally you would think, oh, how could a Buddhist monk be around these very sensual women, let alone, and they were in beautiful leather outfits, let alone put his arms around them, dance with them. And, I mean, isn't that impure? Isn't that not spiritual? Well, I don't know. Is it? I had a good time because I was in a state of meditation the whole time, because my whole life is about meditation. And they had a very good time, and we made a great rock video, and hopefully it'll be very successful. There's an old Zen story. Once upon a time, this is a true story, there were 2 monks, and they came to a river. And there was a woman standing at the river. And she was looking at the river, and obviously she was dressed nicely and didn't, you know, want to get herself too wet crossing the river. So one of the monks walks up to her, and says to her, can I carry you across? And she says, sure. So he picks her up, carries her across, and puts her down on the other side. Of course, it's the east. They bow, and the other monk, of course, walks alongside, doesn't help at all. And they both get to the other side, and she goes her way, and they go their way. Now, 2 monks are walking down the street. And about 20 minutes later, one monk turns to the other monk and the fellow who didn't carry her. And he says, "How could you do that? That's unspeakable. How could you touch a woman? You're a Buddhist monk, let alone carry her across." And the monk kind of scratched his head. He saw an opportunity for humor here, obviously. And he turned to the other monk and he said, "I put her down on the other side of the river. It seems to me you're still carrying her." Well, that's the essence of Tantra. The essence of Tantra is that there's nothing wrong with women. There's nothing wrong with sexuality. There's nothing wrong with technology. There's something right with meditation. And to limit meditation and restrict it to the Zen garden, to restrict it to the Himalayan monastery, to restrict it in any way is not what meditation is about. So what I'm doing is taking ancient traditional methods of meditation that work, that lead to enlightenment, and incorporating them with my students in very Western settings, in very Eastern settings, because the East today is a world of computer technology also. In other words, it really doesn't matter what the form is. The essence is what matters. Don't judge a book by its cover. My experience as a Buddhist monk is that meditation makes everything I do wonderful, excessively so. I still feel pain, I still feel pleasure, but I feel ecstasy, and I'm the happiest person I've ever met in my life. And I'm creative, and I'm in love with music, and I'm in love with women, I'm in love with teaching, and I experience nirvana. I can go into states of exalted consciousness that you can't even imagine. You can't even imagine. And I do that here, now, in this world, in the 20th century, and I'll do it in the 21st century, and forever. Because that's what enlightenment is about. Enlightenment is about being real, being still, being centered, but not running away from life, not running away from the world, not running away from anything, but facing things, a little at a time, as you gain more courage and confidence from meditation. So if you were to say to me, "Rama, what's Tantric Buddhism about?" I would say Tantric Buddhism is being yourself, meditating and not adopting some kind of artificial lifestyle, learning to meditate, learning to respect others, and then taking whatever fascinates you and excites you about life and taking the energy of meditation, the brightness, the beauty, these new states of mind and powers that you'll gain from meditating, and putting it into your life, into your work, into your play, into whatever you do. That's what I do. There is a secret, of course. I mean, naturally, you would expect a secret. I mean, this is all about secrets, and I can't tell you most of them, because you have to be telepathic to understand. Almost all real tantric teaching is taught through telepathy, and the gateway to telepathy is meditation. It's not that it's a secret, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but if you're not telepathic, you don't know. So the secret, I suppose, is learning to stop thought, learning to practice meditation on the chakras, and learning to stop running away and to put a smile on your face instead of a frown, and to get control of your mind. Then you'll become telepathic. Then if you come and see myself, or if you go see another Buddhist master, someone who's enlightened, then through telepathy we will teach you all kinds of things that we've learned. Maybe you'll teach us something too. Tantric Buddhism is the highest form of self-discovery. It is the graduate school of self-discovery. I practice it. I teach it. And I learn something new about it every day, because there's no end to enlightenment, there's no end to bliss, there's no end to ecstasy, and there's certainly no end to nirvana, and none of us can ever know it all. That's the good part. We learn something new and we're experiencing something new at every moment. But it all bases around meditation, being still, being silent, and, don't fake it, do it. The mind is the most mysterious thing. It's capable of, that's why we do yoga, to find out. But one thing I can tell you about the mind is that it's very much like water. Now, water takes the shape of whatever vessel you put it in. If you take water and you put it in a round bowl, it assumes a round form. If you put it in a square container, it assumes a square form. The mind is very much like water. It takes a form. And That's what reincarnation and karma are all about. At first you may not see the relationship, but in Tantric Buddhism, we do. Most people believe that karma, you've heard the term I'm sure, has to do with what you do and what comes back to you. So that is to say, if I do something, if I'm nasty to somebody, it'll come back to me. If I'm good to somebody, it'll come back to me. Well, I think that's being a little too literal. If I go out and take $1 million and throw it out on the street, I don't think I'm going to get $1 million in the mail necessarily. I don't think that's what karma is really about. Karma is an esoteric understanding of how the mind works. And it works something like this. Whatever you think about, you become. Whatever you hold in your mind, you become. Because the mind doesn't have a particular shape. It's like water. It assumes whatever shape it's placed into. So the idea is simple. Whatever you think about, whatever you focus on, you will become. That is to say, the level of awareness of your thoughts, your desires, your feelings, your emotions, your conditioning, that determines where you live inside your mind. That determines your level of happiness and unhappiness. Now, reincarnation is a very simple concept. Essentially, the idea is that we've always existed and we will always exist. And at the end of each life, the good news is that we're reborn into another body. The bad news is that we're reborn into another body. It's not good, it's not bad. It depends on your karma. And your karma, very simply, at the beginning of each life, depends upon how you ended your last life. So, the state of mind you die in, your last moment, when you're gasping your last breath, whatever your state of mind was, which is accumulation of all the experiences you've had from that life in your prior lives, meaning your level of awareness, is transferred into your next life. When you're born, little infant, tabula rasa, there's nothing there yet. There's a seed form inside you from your past lives. It's not physical. It's what you might call the soul or the Atman. We call it the causal structure in Tantric Buddhism. Now, inside there, it's like DNA. Inside every little bit of DNA is the whole history of the human race. And of course, from our DNA, we'll develop our size, our shape, our coloration. Our DNA is within those chromosomes, is everything that's going to happen to us, at least on a physical level, our growth and development. So there's kind of an inner DNA, which we call karma. And that is the causal structure, this non-physical part of our being that lives from one life to another. Now, what excites me about Buddhism, and particularly Tantric Buddhism, is the view that I'm not stuck with my heredity. Yes, I may have done this, that, or the other thing for a lot of lifetimes, but in this lifetime, in this one lifetime, I can change my karma. And my karma is not what happens to me, it's who I am. I can completely change at any time. To do this, all I need are really three things. I need the power to create that change. I need instruction, so I'll know how to do it. And then I need a new form. I need a new shape, something that's more evolved, that's happier, that's brighter, that's more knowledgeable, that's deeper. Power comes from meditation. When you learn to meditate and stop your thought, you release a tremendous amount of energy. And whether you're interested in athletics and getting into the Olympics, whether you have to deal with the death of someone that you loved, and suddenly you're alone and you've got to cope with the world, whether you're dealing with an aging body or a body that's just in development, whether you're dealing with a series of terrible tragedies that have befallen you or others, whether you're dealing with things that should make you happy and gosh, they don't, or you're happy and you're afraid you're going to lose it. It's called human life. We all deal with it at every moment. But when you release energy in meditation, what you gain is power. And what this power does by itself is it unlocks higher levels of your mind that are in there. Now, we may have a lot of lights in the house, but if there's no electricity, they don't do us much good. If there's electricity, then we can turn on the lights, and suddenly we can see. So it's very much the same with what we call Kundalini. Kundalini, or another name for it is prana, is this essential energy, non-physical energy that's inside everything and everyone. Meditation is the process. It's kind of like splitting atoms, and we release a lot of energy. When we stop thought, when you can make your mind calm and still, like a lake without any ripples, at that time, incredible energy and power is released. It's literally fission combined. And the longer you can stop your thought, the more energy is released. So that's step one. We now have energy. Now we need instruction, because energy by itself is not always a good thing. You know, if you have a Ferrari, it may be a nice-looking car. It goes very fast, but you've got to be a good driver, or you may kill yourself or kill someone else. If you're just walking and you fall down, you probably won't die, but in a Ferrari, you're toast if you don't do it right. So with power has to come control. We have to have a sense of what to do with this power, and that's where the Tantric Buddhist set of ethics comes in. Now, these ethics are not something that somebody made up to lay a trip on you, and just somebody said, I want to get control over you, or I have some philosophy and I'm going to try and scare you into it by telling you about afterlives that are horrible. This is real. People have investigated it. As a matter of fact, as a Tantric Buddhist, you have to fact check and experience everything that everyone else before you has to make sure it's valid and real. That's why I like it. That's why it works for me. It's not some system just based on what somebody made up or what somebody was afraid of or wishful thinking. So I have meditated. I have stopped thought, not just for moments, but for hours, for days, and released incredible amounts of Kundalini. And then I have explored the ethical system of Tantra. That is to say, I have learned that there are things that you can do with this energy that create happiness for you, and things that you can do with this energy that will make you a very unhappy person, really screw you up major. And it's entirely up to you. No one is checking. You can learn to meditate and make yourself happy or miserable. And needless to say, like in walking, you're going to fall down a few times before you perfect it. So as you learn to meditate and you release energy, I'm sure you're going to make some mistakes. We call them learning experiences. If you use the ethics of Tantra, which are pretty simple, and I think you probably already know them, we all do in our own hearts, then as you release this energy and you have a new template for it, you will be able to change who you are because you aren't anyone. That's the secret of Buddhism. The essence of all Buddhism is there is no self, meaning we're not just one thing. We are a reflection, a series of images that we have been for a while, and we are those images as long as we continue to self-reflect them. I can stand in front of a mirror and look at it and see myself, and if I just stand there and see myself, that's who I am. But if I change and stand in front of the mirror, guess what? I'll see somebody else. Well, the mind is a mirror. It's a very fascinating thing. And if we hold new images in our minds, which we can do with the power that's released from meditation, if we start to see things in a new way, think happier thoughts, believe again, if we do that not just during the periods of meditation where we're sitting doing tantric visualizations or meditating, but also just during the day, then gradually this tremendous power of meditation reshapes our mind. Suddenly, these lights that we didn't even know were there start to come on. Higher levels of mind start to open. Suddenly you can learn a subject that would have taken years and days. Suddenly you can do things in athletics that you could never imagine yourself doing. In other words, I wouldn't say you can do everything, but you can certainly do a lot more than you did before. And the next day, that will be even more so. This meditation is an incredible thing, this Tantric meditation. We are releasing the power that makes all of this. The power that makes a flower, that makes the earth, that makes the whole universe. All that power is inside everything. We call it the thatness, the essence of all things. In meditation, we still the mind and we go into the thatness and we release this energy. Then we take an ethical structure, and the ethical structure is love. What else could it possibly be? What else could it possibly be but love? You know what love is. I know what love is. Love is not what they're trying to tell us it is out there. Love is not a Hallmark card. Love is not, getting laid. That's sex. Love is when we see beyond ourselves, and we realize that other people experience suffering and experience joy just like we do. Love is when we see that we are connected to everything, and when we harm something, we harm ourselves, whether it's in our mind or with our body. That's what love is. Love is a higher awareness. Love is when we mature as a being and we discover that there's somebody more in the universe, there's someone else besides ourselves. And happiness comes when we do healthy things for ourselves and healthy things for others, when we get beyond the ego, beyond the self. Just beyond the self is eternity, and it's shining. It can be a cloudy night. I can't see the stars, but it doesn't mean they're not there. The clouds part, and suddenly there's billions and billions of stars and suns and nebulas. Just the ones I can see are amazing, and they go on forever. Well, inside your mind, there are endless realities. There are endless fields of light and awareness and ecstasy. And if your body is aging, or if it's growing, if your life is a tragedy or a comedy or just plain boring, you can change all that. And to not think so is an incorrect seeing. And most people have an incorrect seeing. When you meditate, if you practice meditation and you learn to first quiet the mind and eventually stop thought for short periods of time and then gradually more and more, and then if you put that energy into love, I'm not talking about becoming Mother Teresa, I'm not talking about not caring about yourself. I mean, I think for most of us that's unrealistic. I think we do what makes us happy, and we should. But part of the ethics of the Buddhist structure is to learn that happiness comes from putting energy back in the system. Lead the best life you can. But help somebody else out once in a while. Don't think you're better, because if you think you're better than someone else just because you're in a position to help them, well, your ego blossoms and suddenly you don't feel very good. It's the funniest thing. We call it the razor's edge in Tibet. That's the pathway to enlightenment. In other words, it's a very, very tight line when you have all this power and all this knowledge to not make a mess of things. That's what makes it exciting and fun, but it's doable. It's something we all do every day. So karma is who you are. It's your state of mind. You can change your state of mind if you have energy, which you get from meditation. If you combine that energy with love, meaning seeing that we're all part of everything and everything is part of us, which will come to you if you read some Buddhist books, if you are around people who are just happy, you'll begin to see there's more to life than just you. Then, of course, if you have a good teacher, they will show you how to visualize, how to do some of the mental yoga we do when we're out in the world. We call it mindfulness. When you do that and put all that power behind that, your karma changes. Suddenly, every day you're someone new, and you'll like who you are better. You look in the mirror and you're somebody else. You're brighter, you're more beautiful, and you realize you're not the body. And what happens in this physical world, while it has its relative importance, is nothing compared to the essence of your being, the reality of your life, which is your state of mind. And whatever your state of mind is, at the moment of your death, that's where you'll be in your next life. Wherever you go, there you are. So meditate, make your mind still, be ethical. Don't think that you're better than anyone else, and don't think that you're worse than anyone else. We're all part of everything. Everything is part of us. Smile instead of frown, and learn that everyone else is kind of like you. They're all part of everything too. And I think you'll find that happiness, no matter what your situation in life, is as far away as your heart and your meditation. I was born in California, in San Diego, but I grew up mainly in the East Coast of the United States, and there's a lot of snow. Parts of California have snow too. So I had a girlfriend when I was in high school, and she was a really, really good skier, and I'd never been on skis. Now, today they have wonderful, techie, small little skis, and my first pair of skis, they were Stein Eriksons. They were really long. That was when they used to think that your skis had to be as tall as you were, if not a little taller. It was great. So we went skiing together, and she was an expert skier, and I'd never skied. So she said, come on, let's get on the chairlift. So we got on the chairlift and we rode up to the top of the lift. Then she said, let's get on the next chairlift. And we rode up, and then we went up 3 chairlifts to the top of the expert slope. And it was a very icy, icy day. Conditions were extremely icy. And she said, okay. And she started skiing. And she sort of went down the mountain, and she looked great, and she was terrific, and the whole bit. Great. So I looked down the mountain, and it was a long way down. Now, I didn't know too much about skiing. I didn't know that you were supposed to go from side to side when you skied down the mountain. So what I did was I aimed myself straight down the mountain, and there was a lot of moguls, a lot of ice, and I went straight down. And it was very exciting because I started to go faster and faster and faster. And then I hit my first mogul, and I kind of jumped up, and I went up about 6 feet in the air, and I came down, and it was okay. I must have been doing around 55 miles an hour when I came to a pretty big jump. And I went up the jump, but no one had ever told me to keep my tips up. So consequently, well, I don't have to tell you what happened. I rolled a long way. But then what I did was I got up again and snapped my bindings back on, and I started going straight down the hill again. And I fell down eventually again. And this went on for a while till I got to the bottom of the mountain. Meantime, when I got down there, of course, she was hanging out with this good-looking guy from the ski patrol. Okay. That's the story of my life. I don't know about your life. Now, I meditate. I practice Tantric Buddhism. So unlike the ordinary person who would get the message and at this point say, forget this skiing nonsense, I said, forget this skiing nonsense. I'm going to get into snowboarding. I don't know if you know what a snowboard is. It's death on 3.5 feet of fiberglass. It's kind of like a real small surfboard. And only what you do is you go up to the top of a mountain and you snap onto it with your bindings and you surf a mountain. So I got into snowboarding. Now, I went to the Far East. I went to the Himalayas when I was a teenager. And I went over there to surf the Himalayas. I thought this would be a great thing because I had gotten into it and surfed most of the bigger mountains in the United States and Canada. And at this point, this wasn't a very popular sport. Today, of course, it's quite macho, and you see people doing wonderful jumps. It was kind of new. There weren't really good boards, but anyway, I was excited. I went to the Himalayas. So I met a Buddhist monk, quite unintentionally. Actually, I was coming down one of the Himalayas. I was snowboarding, and I hit him. I ran into him. I surfed a Buddhist monk. And I didn't hurt him, fortunately. It was sort of at the end of the run. And he just came out of nowhere, and I just banged into him. And he got up and brushed himself off, and I brushed myself off. And I didn't think he spoke any English at all. This was in Nepal. So I figured an apology of some kind was better than none. So I went over in English, and I said, yeah, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to surf you. This kind of thing. I felt bad, because this was some kind of a religious holy person, and I was this, kind of dumb, gangly American teenager who wanted to surf the Himalayas, because it seemed like a good thing to do at the time. So he looked me in the eyes, and he said that our destiny was to meet, and that he had been told by his teacher a long time ago that he was going to meet this Western youth coming down a mountain. He didn't say how. And that we were going to meet, and that he was destined to teach me about Tantric Buddhism, which in fact he did. And that's another story for another time. But he taught me something. Now, I said to myself, well, I'm not interested in this Buddhist stuff. I came over here to surf the Himalayas. I want to just find the hardest, craziest mountain. I think I was partially suicidal. And I just want to go down it on this board, I mean, the harder the better. I was looking for death, I guess, or an ultimate rush. And I assume this guy didn't know anything about snowboarding. He's some Buddhist monk, and he does the beads, and he prays, and, I just happened to run into him. And he said, I can teach you to do that better. He said, I can teach you to do that better. I can show you how to come down better, but you've got to learn how to meditate. And I said, you're kidding. And he said, come tomorrow to my monastery. And he told me where it was. It was in the outskirts of Nepal. So I went. And he taught me how to meditate. He gave me my first instructions in meditation. And then he began to explain how to do anything perfectly. He called it Tantric Buddhism. and it's what I'm trying to talk to you about, but I can't talk to you about it because you have to show it to somebody. Here I am. I'm Tantric Buddhism. I've surfed some of the greatest mountains there are. I've fallen down a lot too. He said this to me. He said, you have to understand, if you want to perfect anything in life, you must become the thing you seek to perfect. He said, you are the board. I said, what do you mean? I'm the board. I'm the guy who's standing on the board going down the mountain. He said, no, that's only in your mind. You've created a separation in your ideas, in your thoughts, in your whole way you look at life. You think you and that board are different. You are the board. When you see that you are the board, then you will not have to think about how you snowboard. You won't have to think about how you do anything. Your body and the board will become one. Your energy fields will merge, and you will snowboard better than you ever have. And he said, you can do this with anything. So I practiced. I tried, and at first, I have to be honest, I didn't have much success because I was thinking, I am the board, and I'd fall off the board, and I was doing better without it. But I went back to his monastery, and he taught me more about meditation, about the philosophy of reincarnation, all kinds of wonderful things. He taught me how to meditate. And then he taught me how to make my mind quiet. And I got on that snowboard, and I went down mountains that I thought I could never go down because I became part of the board. In other words, I listened to it. I didn't tell it what to do. I became part of it. I came back to the West. I went to college. I became a straight-A student. Graduate school, honors, fellowships, Phi Beta Kappa. I became enlightened. I've done all kinds of things because I've learned the secret. The secret is to become one with something. And you can only do that when you meditate. When you get past your thoughts, when you get past your ideas, when you forget about who you are and who everybody else is, there's another part of us, a hidden secret part. I can't explain it to you, but it's part of you, and it's part of me, and it's part of all things. Tantric Buddhism is about learning about that part of yourself and allowing it to merge with things, to become things, to know things on what we call the other side, in other dimensions. So now, when I write a piece of software, when I write music, whatever I do, I allow my awareness field, which through years of disciplined meditation has become very lucid, to become part of something. I become a thing. I extend myself beyond myself. That's what Tantric Buddhism is really all about. And if it's enlightenment, you have to become it, if that's your interest. If it's being a film star, you have to become it. If you want to be an Olympic athlete, you have to become with it. You have to get beyond your mental limitations. And this can be done by learning to still your mind, by going beyond the concepts that say, this is what a man is, this is what a woman is, this is what life is, this is what death is. You know, we're all so smart, we're all so technological, we've got science, but most people don't even know what happens when they die. They don't even know where they came from before they were born. They make things up to make themselves feel better. I know, because I've studied Tantric Buddhism. I know that the mind is infinite, it's omnipresent, and that we are part of a larger mind, an infinite mind, and that's the mind of eternity. And it's not a male mind, and it's not a female mind. It's pure mind, and it's beyond understanding. Some of us are lucky. We get to merge with it, become different parts of it, experience it. That's what Tantric Buddhism is. I don't snowboard anymore. I'm 43. I don't think I would roll as well. I do other things now, but I use the same principle that Buddhist monk taught me. And of course, I studied with many other teachers. I become things. I allow myself to be a beginner. I allow myself to go past my limitations, my fears, my desires. I stop my thoughts. Right now, I'm not thinking. There's no thought in my mind whatsoever. No thought, no image, absolute, perfect clarity. Look at my eyes. No thought. My awareness field can stretch out into infinity. It can merge with anything. That doesn't mean I'm special. It just means that I'm happy. Because beyond this thin veil of cosmic reality that you call life, There's endless ecstasy, and you can merge with that. And once you've done that, then you can play with anything. You can play with snowboarding, you can play with career, you can play with relationships, you can play with anything you want. There's no end to learning, there's no end to life, there's no end to ecstasy. But if you block yourself up inside your body and mind and your fears and your personality and your vanity and your ego, we all have that, of course, but if you let it rule you, then you won't be happy. You won't feel that ecstasy, and you won't become one with whatever there is to become one with. The universe, infinity, beauty, ecstasy. For me, it was snowboarding at one age. It's making great videos tonight. Tomorrow, who knows what it'll be. I think it's flying to California. I think I have a seminar there tomorrow night. And I have to become one with my students. I have to teach them how to do all this. But I know a secret. I can make my mind quiet because I've stood on top of a mountain and done it and become one with the board, and I let the board and the mountain teach me. So isn't that what life is really all about? Letting life teach us? Are we really so smart? Emptiness means learning. It means opening yourself up to life, allowing it to teach you, not just in the formations that human beings have come up with. They're still killing each other in wars. How smart could this race be? There is an alternative. That's to learn from life, from the flow of the Tao, from nirvana, to still your thoughts, to put a smile on your face, and to study ancient wisdom. You are the board. That's what he told me. And he was right. And now I can become anything, and always will, because I then aimed that at enlightenment. And enlightenment is endless, perfect, celestial, wonderful, and available to everybody. Tantric Buddhism is the study of becoming one with things. Hi, I'm back again. I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine, Padmasambhava. I don't know where he is right now. He's in one incarnation or another. For some reason, I don't think he's on this planet anymore. In any case, he is the most famous teacher of Tantric Buddhist meditation. He really brought Tantricism to Tibet. And what he did was what Bodhidharma did a little while before. He said, Bodhidharma said, that Buddhism had gotten cluttered up. Buddha's point was this: we don't need ritual. What we need is meditation. It's good to hear about other people's experiences. They're inspiring. But what we need are our own experiences. What you need to be able to do is sit down, meditate, and experience eternity, immortality. You need to be able to rid yourself of hate, of violence, jealousy, greed, and replace it with ecstasy beyond comprehension. It's great to read. I love reading. It's fun to read about other people who do these things. But finally, what Buddhism is about is not about reading the adventures of someone else. It's about your adventure. It's about you becoming Padmasambhava, you experiencing nirvana, you experiencing enlightenment. So the essence of all practice is meditation. When you meditate, you're making your mind still. You can read all the Buddhist texts in the world, it won't make your mind still. You can listen to knowledgeable people speak, you won't experience any enlightenment. What you do need to do is to meditate. And that's what Padmasambhava said. And it made him very unpopular. He had to leave Tibet for a while, as a matter of fact. He was chased out of the country, essentially. And he had to beat feet, lay low for a while till things cooled down and come back, and then he taught again. That happens because people didn't want to hear it. There was a hierarchy. There was a change of venue. Suddenly, all the fat cats who were teaching religious doctrine that they called Buddhism or this, that, or the other thing were going to be out of a job, because if you can sit at home and do this yourself, and you don't have to have all the monasteries and all the temples, you can just sit in, close your eyes, and meditate and become immortality and infinity. Well, I guess we don't need all the pomp and circumstance. Now, mind you, I like a certain amount of ritual. I like a certain amount of pomp and circumstance, and rules are very good for beginners. But the point of the rules and the point of the pomp and circumstance is to get you to be absorbed in nirvana. So the question is, what is nirvana? Nirvana is enlightenment. And the tantric view of enlightenment, the real one in other words, the most advanced one, the graduate school, is that samsara is nirvana. That is to say that the physical world is not bad. Money isn't bad. Sex isn't bad. There's no such thing. There's only nirvana. It comes in different shades, forms, and colors. In the beginning, sometimes we have to get away from something because we're so used to seeing it in the same way that we can't see it as it really is. What we call its emptiness, its essential nature. But as our view advances, as we grow on the pathway to enlightenment, we have to see that nirvana exists in everything. Nirvana is all that there is. All is one and one is all. This is not an easy thing to do. Many people become quite accomplished in meditation. They learn the disciplines and then they get stuck in them. It's the funniest thing, and they don't become enlightened. So in Tantric Buddhism, what we do is, of course, we center on meditation. We become very good meditators. And then what we do is we go against the prohibitions. That is to say, because we meditate well, because we develop our attention field to experience multidimensional reality, we can now exist in the 20th and 21st century and any century that follows. And we don't have to run away to a mountain. We don't have to go to the monastery. It might be fun to visit one. It might be nice to go to Hawaii and sit in a nice clean place and feel what it's like to meditate. But we can work in the world. We can drive a car, maybe fly a jet plane, maybe travel as an astronaut, and we can practice meditation and become enlightened. Enlightenment is not something that happens because you shave your head and put on an ochre robe. Enlightenment is something that happens because you meditate. You can wear leather, you can wear a tuxedo, you can wear an ochre robe, whatever makes you happy. What matters is that you can stop thought, overcome hate, and experience the infinite levels of reality that we call life. The joie de vivre, the beauty of existence, is what the Buddhist experience is about. I know there are many places that they teach something called Buddhism, and it's not Buddhism. It's a bunch of old guys sitting around being stoical and not being enlightened. That's not Buddhism as I know it. If you are really wise, then you're happy. If you're happy, you smile, and you treat all people with respect, not just when everyone's watching, but when you're in a restaurant and someone's waiting on you, you treat them with respect. You treat people who treat you with disrespect with respect because you see that all of life is holy, all of life is enlightenment. I observe a person's spiritual progression by, of course, how long they can stop thought and enter into nirvikalpa samadhi. But I also very much view it not by the externals, not by the exterior, but by how you treat the people around you, the people you meet on the street. If you have to run away from life, I don't think you're practicing good meditation. On the other hand, if you meditate, accept the circumstances of your life, and gradually transform them, if this Buddhist thing really works, you should be able to live in a contemporary society, visit the monastery, visit the woods, do whatever you want. You should be able to have a sexual relationship or be celibate. You should be able to be the richest person on earth or the poorest. What's the difference? If nirvana is everything, if it's in everything, then there's nothing that isn't holy. Yes, there are things that if we engage in them will lower our attention field, lower our energy, we'll drop into lower states of consciousness and become filled with hate, anger, jealousy, and violence. Obviously, that's not good. So we learn to control our energy. But that control of energy can come in a career. It can come through the practice of martial arts. It can come in painting. It can come in music. It can come in meditation. It's not what we do, it's who we are ultimately. What really matters in the final analysis is what you feel. There's a book written by one of my favorite authors, Saint-Exupéry, and it's The Little Prince. And in it, he says something that I think sums up the essence of all Buddhism. It is only with the heart that one sees rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. And from my point of view, that's what Buddhism is really all about. That's what the experience of enlightenment is about. Tantricism is simply a more advanced view. We've already done the basics. Now we're going to see that we can take this meditation experience into any part of life, into a relationship, into work, into anything, into a rock video, into gardening, into a monastery. What's the difference? It's not about externals, it's about internals. If you can stop your thought, if you can love and not hate, if you can be kind, if you can endure pain even when it's difficult with a smile, I think then that you're at the heart of living and the heart of life.